But we found there's a strong connection.
I would rather deal with organized crime than disorganized crime. Because in disorganized crime, everybody's out there doing whatever they wanted to do. In organized crime, only certain people can do it.
What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of Corruption Connection. I'm your host, Tony Hernandez. So as many of you know, I spent a little bit under a decade as a NYPD transit officer where I did plainclothes undercover work in the subway system throughout New York City. I've been featured on a few channels. You might have seen me on Johnny Mitchell, The Connect, Locked In with Ian Bick, Cam Gagnon, and a few others. But today I actually want to start telling more of my story on my channel. Mostly I focus on organized crime and history, gangs. I've been putting a spotlight on the gang crisis with Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan migrant gangs. And I'm just trying to establish a little bit more of a rapport with my audience. So I figured a one-on-one would be better like this, so that's what I'm doing. So what's it like being a cop in the transit system? Well, I know a lot of you have seen the movie Money Train. If you're from my generation, it came out in 1995, I believe, with Woody Harrelson and Wesley Snipes. It was a story about two guys who were plainclothes anti-crime cops in the subway system. Back in those days, transit, housing, and NYPD were all separate. They were three different departments, technically. In 95, they merged all three, and they all fell under the banner of the NYPD. But at that time, a lot of the depictions in the movie were actually realistic. We actually did peep through holes and spy on people, doing all kinds of stuff in the subway system through the air vents and, just through certain other tricks and trades that we had, little secret locations throughout the transit system where we could see the public and the public couldn't see us. So I think the movie was kind of spot on with that. I'll be doing a breakdown of the movie later on to see, the facts and the fiction of the movie, facts, real life compared to Hollywood. So, stay tuned for that. So aside from all the terrible environmental factors down in the subway system, what's it like to work down there? I mean, it's terrible, in a way it's terrible. People ask me, why did you want to go there? I mean, there was a few reasons why. But for the most part, I knew that was kind of the place where I wanted to be. There was federal funds for overtime, so it was kind of like unlimited overtime. While guys in the precinct were fist fighting for overtime, in transit, they were literally forcing it on you, at that time at least. So much so, I hear that now with all the rise in subway violence, that precinct cops actually sign up for transit overtime, which is crazy. But it happened once in a while. They would get little blocks of overtime. Some guys from the 103, you might see them down in Jamaica Center. That's the precinct that patrolled topside upstairs. That's what we called it. For the most part, whatever, it was just transit cops that got the overtime. So that was like a plus. And the fact or whatever that I could roam around the whole city. When you're in a particular precinct, you're kind of just stuck in that precinct. You might be on a fixed post, which did happen in transit. You could wind up at a fixed station. But at least you made the best of it. But on the trains, the city's your oyster, you could pretty much go anywhere, depending on what lines you had. So after a while, of some good hard work and the right connections, I was able to enter the anti-crime team. And I mean, that in itself or whatever is kind of like the pinnacle of precinct work, like a lot of the cops want to get there in order to go on track to get their detective shield. That's kind of where I was at that point. But working in the transit system as far as plainclothes has evolved. It's not the typical 90s or early 2000s detectives that you'll see with the big Yankee jersey, the white dude with the big Yankee jersey that's clean shaven and he's got, the jeans on and the radio's poking out and you could kind of see and tell that he's a cop. Those days are over. I mean, if you've seen recently, and I saw this as well, it's all over Instagram or whatever that, they move different. The D's move different. We called them the D's when they rolled up. If you saw that Chevy Impala that was all beat up with the dark tinted windows, you just assumed that it was the D's rolling up on you, the cops. That's what we called it growing up in the city. So those days of actually identifying the D's and the vehicles, they're over, in my opinion. there's so many vehicles the NYPD utilizes in their fleet now that those Impalas are just a thing of the past. You know, it's like the Crown Vics. You know, they just get phased out and move on to the next thing. And I think that resonates as well with the way that plainclothes officers dress. You know, if you look at the department now, it's becoming a lot more diverse. You're seeing a large influx of minorities in the department. You know, blacks and Latinos, and they're kind of changing the face of what the department looks like. You know. So in a city like New York, where it's, you know, one of the most diverse places on the planet, when you don't have your quintessential cop that's Caucasian with the Yankees jersey all bulky and stuff like that, you know, you can kind of blend in more. And I think that's exactly what's happening now. You know, I'm not going to give away their secrets on how you can tell who's a cop and who's not, you know, maybe later on. But, you know, when they change that, but there's certain tells that if I looked at someone, I could probably tell. But even I get fooled. I mean, you know, I've seen some guys that look straight New York, straight hood from the street, and they're cops. You know, so you just never know nowadays.
Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this video, please click the like button below and make sure to subscribe to the channel.
If you would like to support the channel further, please hit the super thanks icon, which can be found below each video or in the comment section below. If anyone is interested in becoming a connected member, click the join button to gain access to rare pictures of organized crime figures, untold stories, and exclusive behind the scenes footage.
Thank you. Now let's get back to Corruption Connection.
Subway crimes, you know, they're on the rise. They're in the news every day. A lot of people say I exaggerate. It's not an exaggeration. It's a harsh truth and a soft reality. I've said that many times, you know. Your soft reality might be you're going to work every day, you're going to pick up the kids, you're going to get something to eat, you're going to your local supermarket. You know, you might take the subway, but it's to A and B. Me and the rest of the transit police, we're in the subway all day, sometimes 12 hours a day. We hear and see everything that goes on. You might have just missed the crime because you came late or you came too early, but it's there. It goes on. And a lot of the times it's not reported. I think that's something that skews the numbers as well, the crimes being not reported. Aside from the fact that there's number fixing going on, and I'll talk about that in the next episode. If crimes go unreported, which a lot of them do, how can you accurately calculate the percentage, whether the percentage of crimes increased or decreased from a particular year before? Now you could say, hey, well, you know, there was just as many unreported crimes as there were in the previous year as there is to this year. I mean, how can you even prove that? Especially with the city being a free-for-all and the criminals feeling more emboldened to commit crimes due to the soft laws that are put in place by the weak political leaders that are running New York City. I mean, Governor Hochul, she's completely out of touch with the whole city. I don't even know how she's governor. Mayor Adams is the swagger mayor. I mean, you could see that guy's movements from 10 steps away. You know, his whole angling for the pardon and then kind of turning his back on Trump. It's just the kind of way he is. He's a real good politician. That's not a compliment, you know, you know, but, you know, that being said, it's just hard to determine. It's the soft reality of people thinking like, oh, well, if I don't see it, it doesn't happen. And I think that, you know, that's just a facade. You know, it's just a facade that it's like maybe like a nice little lie that people tell themselves just to make themselves feel better. Oh, well, it's not that dangerous. I haven't seen that. Meanwhile, the criminal reports of the crimes that are actually reported are through the roof. I mean, over the last 5 years, I believe from 2020 to 2025, violent crimes in New York City have increased 30-40%, talking about going from numbers like 36,000 to almost 70,000. I mean, that's crazy. It's almost double. In many instances, it has to do with the numbers and the brass playing with the numbers. Recently, you've seen in the news, actually, this place I actually worked out of, Transit District 20, that was my home base for a long time. The commanding officer of that precinct was actually recently demoted for number fixing. So I'm going to get into that in the next episode, so stay tuned. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. So until next time, I'm your host, Tony Hernandez, and this is Corruption Connection.